Hello. Can you hear me? Ray, can you turn us up a little? Test 1, 2, 1. Betty? Betty, hello? Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you. William. William Lufay.
Yes, sir. Bill Lufay here.
Oh, good to see you.
Excuse me, there's a Ford truck outside running. Did someone leave their engine on? I just want to, highlight that if someone has a Ford truck. Thank you. Was it a Ford truck? What color was it?
It's 955 and then the letters on the license plate.
Maybe there's an animal that they're keeping cool. Is Crystal's taken care of? Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. There you go. That's good. My name is John Craig. I'm the city manager here in Morro Bay. Just started earlier this year. Appreciate the council members that voted for me. I was told it was unanimous, but you never know. So I'm glad that they chose me to come in here. So this is our second community meeting regarding the purchase of the former Morro Elementary School, the site known as that. We're going to give a recap of sort of how we got here and what we're talking about, as well as discussing some of the findings that we've had and sort of plot a path forward as we go there this evening. First off, is anybody that wasn't at the first community meeting? Was not. So good number. So we'll sort of I'll try to recap sort of how we got here. If I miss anything, make sure you call it out, and we'll try to keep a little bit of order, but make sure everyone's informed as far as we go. So I want to say that I am happy to be up here speaking to you and talking to you this evening, but I certainly am not the one that put all this information together. We have a staff working group, a staff team that has been working diligently on this process, not just the five of us here, but also other department heads within the city. But this is the core group of staff members that we have that are working on our due diligence project. Brian Stack, the city attorney, Erlen Singwag, our community development director, Emily Conrad, our finance director, and Michael Codrin is our special projects manager that's doing all the work on this project, keep us organized and on task. And so they are more a part of this than I am. I just get to get up and talk. So as we go through, any questions that are pressing or that I'm missing, please raise your hand, let me know. Otherwise, we'll hold questions to the end and sort of go from there. We'll get to it. So tonight, I want to talk about a little bit about what we learned from the findings of the first meeting. It was very helpful to us to listen to the community members, to listen to what you have to say regarding what your thoughts are about what you want as a community the site to be. Tonight, we're going to focus on three things. We're going to share what we've learned through our due diligence efforts. We're going to talk about discussing some of the reuse scenarios for the property, including how cost may play a factor in those reuse scenarios. And finally, we want to hear from you again, your input on the items that we're talking about again here tonight. One thing to keep in mind, we are still in the preliminary phases of this entire process. We have talked as staff, as counselors, as community members about what we want to do there and who's going to lead it and what the site's going to look like. We're, as a staff, not really there yet. We are trying to continue to learn about the site, put together the findings that we have during due diligence. I'll get a little bit more of this, but the main point is your ongoing input is really helpful to the counselors who are making the decision about whether, first, what we purchase this site, and second, what we do with it if indeed we do decide to purchase it. The agenda for tonight is talk about what we heard at the last meeting, share our due diligence items, the survey of Phase 1, asbestos plan, as well as asbestos and environmental reports on the site. Talk about the historic resources that we have and what the site means in terms of history. Show our work in progress and what we have going ahead. And 3 suitability scenarios that have no basis in reality, but are hear me, there's no basis in reality. We're just scenarios that we put big numbers up there, so don't yell at them if it's something that doesn't make sense to you. So, and then we're going to have an open microphone format, much like we did last time, where you're able to share your thoughts. For those of you that weren't there last time, the site that we're talking about is pictured here with the yellow border around it. It's on the poster here as well as the poster in the back. It is a 9.7 acre site. It is owned currently by the school district, San Luis Coastal School District, and they have agreed to sell it to the city for a purchase price of $5.3 million. Again, 9.7 acres, $5.3 million. The city gave them a due diligence payment of $500,000 upon signing that back in March. When we came to agreement, the council agreed to purchase the property and the school district agreed to sell the property. That would leave a balance of $4.8 million that the city would need to pay them by the due diligence period end date, which is October 31st. The city has agreed to complete the purchase and sale and provide the rest of the payment that's due on or before October 31st of this year. Another date that's key to that is that the school district was not willing to, in our negotiations, the school district wanted a non-refundable deposit in case the city decided to pull out. What we agreed to was that the deposit of $500,000 would become non-refundable on August 31st. So the sale agreement is binding. There are certain conditions under which the city, if we choose to pull out, that gets on the legal aspect. That's why the lawyer's here. But there are certain conditions under which the city can choose not to proceed with the sale. If they choose to do so before August 31st, there is no penalty, and the $500,000 deposit is refundable. After August 31st, it is non-refundable. Therefore, as staff, we are encouraging the council to come to a conclusion prior to August 31st, and that's why we're working diligently to get this information gathered, put together. The plan is to present at the council meeting on August the 25th our due diligence findings as a business item at the city council meeting, and then receive direction from the city council at that time as to how they would like us to proceed. And so that's the background that we talked about last time. In addition to that, we heard from community members. There were 70 or 80 different community members here last time talking about their thoughts about it. Our input from that night, basically 25 community members took the microphone on April 29th, I believe, and we listened carefully to all of them. Those comments, for us, what stood out was that the room was strongly in support of the purchase of the Morro Elementary property and for using it for various purposes that are yet to be determined, but they were thinking as a community different aspects of what it might be able to be used for. The conversation was not about whether or not to buy the property that night. It was how it should be used once the cities purchase it and it's in our hands. So the participants gave us a clear signal that from their perspective, the city should purchase the property and move forward with a reuse of the site right here in the middle of our city. So what we heard that night, the top themes really were preserve the 1936 schoolhouse. Some community members brought some historic pictures of those. that are over here on the table and some in the back of what it looks like back in time. It is a beautiful building and surrounding grounds that really points to the history not only of this community, but also a time in the United States when things were run a little bit differently. And so it's fun to think back about those times. Again, it's a 1936 schoolhouse. The other buildings in the facility, there's a map right back in the back that the Friends of Morro Elementary provided that talk about each of the 8 buildings on the site and what year they were built. So those are back there. In general, housing was supported as a future use. This site is currently zoned 9.7 acres, all zoned for housing. It's zoned for high-density housing, which means 25 to 47, 15 to 27, as I said, houses per acre, doorknobs per acre, if you will. So large scale, the highest form of zoning that we have is high-density housing. So on a 9.7 acre site, that would be somewhere between 15 to 27 times 9.7. So high-density residential housing, it is zoned for that, and what that means is that is the use currently decided in the city's master plan. And if something were to be done differently than that purpose, it would need to be rezoned and go through the rezoning process and have that formulated into different uses that would to be used for anything different, including use of a schoolhouse for something other than housing, which is generally considered. Second thing that we heard, a second tier of questions really touched on the funding, how we would go about purchasing that, our water capacity, how we would need to utilize the site in terms of mixed-use housing, use of sports fields and or open space, and perhaps a government office building in the school building. So we heard very clearly, excuse me, the messages of last time. We've done some more due diligence. We're going to report some of our findings and then hear from you again on your thoughts. Again, what we heard, are there any hazardous materials on site? Really, what we found was that there's no surprises there. We'll talk more about specifically what was there. Michael's going to come up and share a little bit about our findings in the due diligence. Is the building a historic resource? It is confirmed by a couple of different sources that it is indeed historic, and many aspects of the individual buildings on the site are deemed historic. Again, you can see the site plan back there, but 4 of the 8 buildings are currently designated, are old enough to be considered historic in terms of being registered as historic buildings. There are 4 other buildings on the site that are newer and are therefore not deemed to be historic in nature. No buildings on the site have currently been designated as historic by any official body. The Friends of Morro Elementary has put an application in to the state to get them on the state historic preservation list, and so that they would be on that list. And the hearing is coming up in a couple months for the state to take that under consideration and consider that application. Can the schoolhouse really hold a city hall? One of the main things that we're learning and we're thinking, if the city goes through with the purchase and the city decides to buy this 9.7 acres, there's a historic building there, 4 historic buildings, but what in the world can the city use it for? The majority of responses that we've heard, the thoughts is to turn it into a full-function city hall, so that the various buildings where city employees are currently located, the employees would then move into that site, excuse me, after some rehabilitation, in order to have a functioning city hall there, to have some activity, to have a place to serve our residents and our citizens as they come in. There are other thoughts and ideas about the use of that building. I think what is important is that if the city is going to spend this much money on a site, it should be utilized in some way. I don't think anyone's in favor of buying a site and letting it sit as a historic monument to things. Some have mentioned museum, but no activity there. I think, again, a purchase price of this magnitude necessitates that it be used for some sort of city purpose. How will the city pay for this? That's the $5.3 million question, I guess. We have some ideas we're going to talk about tonight. By and large, the task of staff is not to come up with a complete picture yet about that, but to offer to the decision makers, our city council, options for how we might go about paying for that over time and over the use of that. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. And then what about water, sewer, and other resources? We're still working on that. We've made no determinations on those, but we are currently hiring experts to come in and make analysis of not only the water availability for the site, electric availability, and if that's possible, but also internal to the site, what the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing resources on site are, how good they are, how much it might cost for us to rehabilitate that for use. And so that is still in process. We're going to talk a little bit about it tonight, but that's still going. Point this the wrong way. Oh. So, due diligence. We negotiated a 6-month, is this you? Yeah. Okay. Nice chatting to everybody. Have a good night. No, I'm still here, don't worry. Michael Codron, our project manager, is going to come up and talk through those. Thanks, Mike.
All right, John, thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Codron. The city has brought me back and asked me to manage the due diligence process for the city. I think a lot of you know what due diligence is. If you've ever bought a property or heard about real estate, whenever there's a purchase, the purchaser needs to be doing due diligence to make sure they know exactly what it is that they are getting. And that's especially true when you're talking about public funds and an expenditure of this magnitude. And so there are a number of standard reports that we have commissioned, a number of consultants that are on site and that are investigating the property and trying to determine its suitability for future uses that the city may choose to move forward with. And you'll hear that term a lot tonight, suitability. So John mentioned that there's a $500,000 earnest money deposit to the school district, and there are limited reasons where the city, might choose not to move forward and be eligible to be refunded that deposit. And key to that decision is the site suitable for the city's intended uses? And so we're really looking at these studies and trying to understand them in terms of site suitability and what the reports mean for future city uses. So what we'll do is go through some of these reports. We have completed a site survey. We've completed a phase 1 environmental site assessment. We've completed asbestos and lead surveys, protocol surveys within the historic buildings. And we've also completed a peer review of a historic resources inventory, which provided really great information confirming really what we already knew. There are a number of reports in progress that we will speak to. Spectra and T.Y. Lin, those are two companies that are doing architectural and structural investigations. Net Positive Building Systems, they're looking at mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. And then from there, we're also doing cost modeling and making sure that there's a fit architecturally in terms of if City Hall is going to move into the historic schoolhouse, can it actually accommodate all of the city's offices that are currently in City Hall. And then finally, up ahead in the future is cost estimating and entitlements analysis. So, one thing that we'll discuss, and as we move through the presentation, it'll be clear that the city can't just sort of move in on day one into the historic building. There's a lot that needs to be done, but one of the things is entitlements. So it's not currently zoned for government offices, for example. So it's a process. And so along with the due diligence report, there's going to be some cost estimating that'll take into account how much time it might take for the city to be able to occupy the historic schoolhouse, among other considerations. And all of this is going to be presented to the City Council initially in August, and then again likely before escrow closes in the fall. All right, so let's jump in and be sure to take notes because we're passing the mic later. And if you have questions about any of the information that I moved through, we'll be able to answer that in detail. So the first item is the ALTA site survey. So ALTA stands for American Land Title Association. They're the ones that set the standards for how a particular survey has to be done, and this is an important type of survey completed by a local firm, MBS, Mike Stanton, MBS Land Surveys. And it confirms what the site looks like, that what it looks like on the ground actually matches what it looks like on paper. The boundaries and property corners are where they're supposed to be, where you would expect them to be. Those have now been marked in the field, so that's a important part of this. A record of survey has been recorded. So this kind of survey, it's foundational due diligence on any major real estate transaction. Lenders will typically demand an ALTA survey if they're going to lend on the property, and it gives us confidence in exactly what the city will be acquiring. The total site area has been confirmed, and there are no boundary concerns that we're raising tonight. So we know exactly what the city is buying, and no surprises came up in this survey. So next up is the Phase 1 environmental site assessment, and this is where, we're really looking underground. We're looking at the site itself to make sure that there isn't anything major that would require cleanup, contamination, hazardous materials, that kind of thing. So let's see. So the ASTM, American Society for Testing and Materials, that's the standard. They're the ones that set the standard. Earth Systems was the consultant that completed the assessment, and it came back clean. So that's a really good outcome. What that means is there were no recognized environmental conditions, and that there is no recommendation for further investigations of contamination or anything related to the site or the history of its use that would give us concern about future occupancy of the property for whatever use the city might determine. The site appears environmentally suitable for the city's intended uses. Important buzzword there again, suitable. And one of the biggest cost unknowns is really been resolved through this investigation. All right, so next up is the asbestos and lead surveys. So this was Padre Associates, another local firm. They surveyed the main schoolhouse buildings, about 19,000 square feet in total area that they took testing samples from. 54 bulk samples were recovered. 11 paint chip samples were analyzed in the laboratory. And asbestos and lead were both detected, but at levels and in materials that are very typical for a building of this age. So there were no findings that were outside of the ordinary. The principal item to be addressed, that's more of a proactive requirement as it relates to asbestos, is about 600 square feet of what they call friable asbestos-containing material, which is duct lagging. This is like a wrap around the ductwork that's in the basement over the furnace equipment. And if you're down there, or if you've ever been in the building and been down in the basement, it's dirty, and there's some rodent control going on and some other things happening down there. But it's identified very clearly that those are asbestos-containing materials. So we certainly expected that. But basically, the results of the asbestos and lead suggest that if there is a rehabilitation project in the future, you have to conduct that project in a way that makes sure that people who are doing that work are not exposed to asbestos or lead, but that there are very standard methods and measures to do that and make sure people are safe, and to basically mitigate the concern for people that are living or working in the site or on the site or in the vicinity. It's a cost driver for sure. It's one of those things that will cost more than if you didn't have that. But again, for a building of this age, this isn't something that's a big surprise or wasn't to be expected. All right. So next up, talk about historic resources a little bit. The city was provided a copy of previous historic resources inventory that was completed by Friends of Morro Elementary. So that report was prepared by Robert Chattel, and it identified the school as eligible for listing in the California Register of Historic Resources. So that's a very important determination. But as part of that, in doing due diligence, the city decided to have a peer review of that work completed. So the city asked LSA Associates to provide a peer review. LSA agreed with most of the Chattel report. They drilled down on some important factors related to the history of the building and concluded similarly that the buildings, that the site is eligible for inclusion in the California Register of Historic Places. So it's the site, the campus, as a good representation of 1936, that period of time, American schoolhouse. So it's got that significance. And that historic status doesn't prevent historic adaptive reuse. But what it does mean is that the property owner is required to follow the appropriate standards for treatment of the resource when they conduct a historic resource rehabilitation project. So, just in the future, what that means basically, we mentioned rezoning, right? So if City Hall is going to move into the 1936 schoolhouse, the first thing that has to happen is an application has to be submitted to rezone the property. That's probably part of, a bigger project being proposed for consideration by the Planning Commission, City Council. That's the kind of project, this purchase is not subject to review under the California Environmental Quality Act, but if you're going to rezone the property and you're going to convert the schoolhouse potentially to city offices, that's something that gets reviewed under the California Environmental Quality Act. There's environmental review of that. And historic resources and how you're treating the historic resources is one of the things that gets evaluated. And the standard of review is based on a book produced by the Secretary of the Interior. So it's the Secretary of the Interior Standards for the Rehabilitation of Historic Resources, and basically all the guidelines for what kind of modifications can occur are included in that. So there's good guidance for how to proceed, and that's normally how those kinds of rehabilitation projects are able to progress is by following those standards. All right. So I also want to highlight some of the work in progress. And so there's still more to be done. One thing that we don't have tonight are cost estimates for what it would take to rehabilitate the building, because there's still a lot of important work being done, and that'll be information that we would present to the City Council in August. But the reports that are still in progress include one by Hunter Smith Architecture. So they're a local architecture firm. They're actually working with the city on the firehouse in North Morro Bay right now. They're preparing a test fit floor plan for City Hall, future City Hall potentially, to make sure then that there's a fit. Spectra Company is their architects, T.Y. Lin, they're structural engineers. They're preparing architectural and structural assessments along with cost estimates. So we'll get cost estimates from Spectra Company, who's a very experienced historical rehabilitation architect. So they have that experience, and they'll be able to give us like a per square foot, rough order of magnitude cost estimate, super high level, but important for planning purposes. And then the other work being done is by Net Positive Engineering, and they're doing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So if you've been in the building, they still have little boys' rooms and little girls' rooms, and that's probably not going to cut it for a space that's open to the public. So all new fixtures, and whether or not the plumbing can handle all that, or whether pipes need to be upsized and things like that. We're going to learn a lot about that. A lot of times the mechanical aspect of rehabilitating an old building in terms of the venting and the airflow, the heating, the air conditioning, That can drive costs. There's standards for that to make sure you have proper ventilation in a public building like that, so we'll get information about that. And then, of course, the electrical. And the electrical seems pretty good in terms of the amount of power coming to the site, but they'll also be looking at the building itself and the wiring and making sure everything's safe there. So the only other thing that Net Positive is looking at is fire sprinklers as well, and it's unclear right now. There hasn't been a code analysis to say whether fire sprinklers are required, but that is something that's sometimes decision makers would choose to do that. It's an important safety measure potentially. If you were building something new like this, it would have to have fire sprinklers. So we'll get information about that too, just to make sure that the City Council has all the information they need to be making the best decision possible. And all these reports feed directly into the cost work that'll take place in July and be incorporated into the August due diligence report. But basically the conclusion here is that the technical picture continues to support the conclusion that the site is suitable for housing and for City Hall reuse. But cost remains the largest unanswered question at this point, and once we have all these reports, we'll be able to have more information for the community and for decision makers about site suitability. So that's a big overview of the work that I've been doing and trying to support the team here. And I'm going to turn it back to City Manager Craig now to talk about the work ahead and the path to closing.
Get all the pictures? You good? Next slide. No, I'll keep it there for you. So the project that we're talking about now, really it has two phases. The first phase runs through August and or October. It's decision making, it's the due diligence. Once that's complete, then if we continue with the purchase, we will shift to building on a cost model, how we're going to pay for this, working through the entitlements question, what the council needs to do in order to make it site usable from a zoning perspective as well as a use perspective, and then talk about, again, the financing of that. The due diligence report is delivered to the city in August. Hopefully on the 12th, it'll be delivered to the staff subcommittee, presented to the council on the 25th, and then the due diligence period, as I said before, ends on the 31st, at which point the refund, the deposit becomes non-refundable. So that's really the suitability decision window that we have. So if the city decides to move forward with that, I think that's when the work begins. The closing would be scheduled for before October 31st, and then the longer conversation would happen about what we want to do with it, what we want it to look like, what the site becomes, where we are with that. That is the exciting part, to think about, dreaming about how we might use this site, what might be on the site in terms of use, not only preserving the character of the site, but also the potential for housing. Again, it's zoned housing, so what that would look like. And I think that's the exciting part, and so often we want to run to that and make that decision, but as staff, we're trying to hold that back and just continue the due diligence, at which point the council can decide how they want to move forward with sort of a site selection. So in the first quarter of next year, hopefully we'll begin getting a clearer picture on what it is that the site will look like. This is the slide I was talking about that has no basis in reality, but is a discussion point for tonight. So you can imagine scenarios where which we use the site for a city hall or other government purposes. We put some housing on the site, and we retain some of the site for open space. It's currently a large field on the site, and how that fits. And so you can imagine the different types of scenarios, and this frames that discussion in terms of the three different types of uses we're looking at on the site. Scenario one really is a housing forward, 100 market rate units on the site with 50 affordable units in addition, and then an acre of open space is one potential scenario. I think that scenario holds strength for those of the citizens that are worried about the potential financing of the site. The more homes you put on the site or you allow on the site, the more revenue you receive from developers who are building those buildings. And so with more a housing forward approach, it also brings in more revenue to help pay for the purchase and or rehabilitation. Then likewise, as you go through, a balanced approach, 75 market rate, 50 affordable housing units, and then 2 acres of the site being held for open space. And then a more open space forward or a wide open space would be less housing, 50 market rate, 50 affordable units, and then 3 acres of open space on that. You can see the different scenarios. Again, not recommending anything or saying anything about this. It's just a visual example of what might happen on the site, and the pros and cons of each of those, I think, is what the council will want to discuss when they come to inclusion about what really we want to put on the site. So your input really on the trade-offs, I think, is what not only staff but the council is interested in hearing about what you consider those trade-offs to be and where you want, as a community, that focus to be. Ultimately, we want it to be the most affordable for the city, as well as offering amenities in both of the other 2 options for site use there. This slide moves, that doesn't. The financial picture. Again, we've talked about the finances. $5.3 million is what the purchase price is. The acquisition price of that. In the middle side there, anything that has to happen on the site is a rehabilitation, including zoning or cost estimates or any figures that deal with potential use or a preparation of package to put before a reuse before the Planning Commission and the City Council, any rehabilitation of buildings on the site, any use of the site for other purposes, all would be considered site rehabilitation, and how much that would be added to the property. Purchase price would end up being the third slide there, the cost of the entire project and how you want to go do it. Does council want to pay for it all up front and make sure that we don't have any debt coming out of that? Do we want to finance the entire project and pay for it over time? These are the type of situations that we want to provide our advice on and input to the council and answer any questions they have as they come up with a scenario and a site for the site as we go forward. So, and then last, you see a lot of different concepts that have been floating around in the community for different ways to pay for the purchase and or rehabilitation. It should say there, the purchase and rehabilitation. Housing on the site obviously would bring in money from developers willing to purchase land in order to build on the site. It may be a public-private partnership where the city invests the land that they would then own with a developer and with a nonprofit to do a 3-way project on the site that really helps maximize all these different parts. Some money would, I think, need to come back to the city in order to help finance the site development and the purchase, and so that's one avenue of doing that. If City Hall is moved into the site, then that frees up the current City Hall complex. There's 3 buildings on that site by which the city would then be able to resell those to a developer for either housing or some other use there. That's another source of income. The Teen Center, formerly known as Teen Center, it's on Tascadero Road, is up for sale. Sign going up soon, Bill. It's appraised at $2.1 million. I think council is very interested in potentially using income from that site to defer not only the purchase price, but to lower any borrowing costs the city might have to put forth in order to do that. Again, it's an asset the city has that would be disposing of. The sale of other properties that the city has, there are various different properties throughout the city that the city owns. They may want to dispose of or sell and use those proceeds to move forward. Again, these aren't recommendations, just concepts that are out there. Development impact fees. We currently, anytime somebody builds in the city, there's an impact to current residents, and so we charge those developments impact fees. They are categorized in various different departments. There are some set aside for economic development use. Those funds can be used on site for something such as this. Rental income from the site, if we were able to put ground lease on the site with a developer coming in, putting apartments and/or homes there, then the city could reap revenue from that site to help pay off any debt as we move forward. The city is currently scheduled to receive $3 million from the Vistra Corporation if they do not take down the towers by December 31st, 2027. We're still about a year and a half off of that, but that is on the horizon of a potential revenue source the city is expecting to come in. Again, that is something that's out there and has been mentioned as a potential use for this project as well. And then also, obviously, state and federal grants are available in various different forms that we continue to look for on a daily basis as staff to try and find ways to lessen the impact on our local dollars through grants. So that's the financial picture as it is. It's really, it's not a lot of new information. The decision to come about how we will pay for that will be recommended to council, and they can follow any recommendation that they want as the decision makers in the city. And so I think that's really the crux of the discussion is how we would pay for a project of this magnitude. So I think the staff really won't be able to say if the site is suitable for purchase until all the due diligence done, but as you heard earlier, it's looking pretty good. The site has really no deficiencies that we didn't know of or deficiencies that we learned of through the due diligence as of date. And so the cost estimates will need to be developed and move forward as we go through different scenarios and options, and then once the policy is decided on how we do that. This will be explored more during the City Council meeting in August when we make our findings public and receive direction from the council at that time. So tonight, wait, hold on, my slides won't go. Yeah. Okay, open microphone. If you have a question or comment you'd like to make, we'll be happy to walk around with the microphone and listen to you. That's your comments. We're going to pass it around, and we're going to capture that input as staff here. Those comments will be folded into our analysis. What we hear tonight will be considered and thought of, and then the council will weigh the combined picture later. So your voice, again, is a meaningful part of this, and we want to give the option for you to talk about the things in which your feelings about this. And so that's where we are. Any questions in general that for everyone before we move forward? Just individual questions. Individual questions.
Testing, testing.
Round of applause for the wonderful Aaron sing-along.
Sorry.
Let you know that I couldn't get into the Zoom or the live stream, so I want to be aware whether that's working.
Okay. So the meeting isn't set up for Zoom this evening. Oh, so the comment was that the meeting tonight wasn't accessible on Zoom, and it has not been set up for Zoom.
It's not available on Zoom, but we are recording it, and it will be up for display purposes later. But you're right, it's not on Zoom. We didn't get that set up. So,
could you tell me what year that this was rezoned, or that this was zoned as?
Yes, so we researched that, and we saw going all the way back into the early 1980s. Mike is all the way back to the early late 80s, early 90s. It was zoned residential high density. That's as far back as we could find.
And another microphone. So I just have a question, and this is for Michael Codron. In the due diligence that was done on lead and asbestos, was that just in the school building, or was it in all of the 4 buildings that were deemed historical?
It was Padre Associates just went into the main schoolhouse as well as the addition. So there's 2, building B, there's 2 additional buildings, and then the music room. So they did not go into the butterfly buildings, or however, the school district, as part of this process, has turned over all of the asbestos reports that they have, and they're all pretty good alignment in terms of what to expect. So it wasn't comprehensive in terms of every single building on the property, but it was relative to the areas that we're looking at reuse.
And just a follow-up question, in terms of the scenarios, there was no mention of what would happen to these other 4 historic buildings. Is there some thought about, would they also be preserved, or would they be torn down? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the reports identify the entire campus essentially as the historic resource. The buildings themselves on their own don't necessarily represent historic resources, but as a campus together, they do. So any removal of buildings, as John mentioned, there are some that are less contributing than others. They're just newer, and they aren't associated with an important architect. So for example, Crawford was the main architect of the schoolhouse, also was the architect of the City Hall in Santa Maria. And then Wynkoop is like a master school designer and designed the butterfly buildings. And so those buildings themselves are, in particularly, they contribute to the historic resource as a whole. Some of the newer schoolhouse buildings may not have the same significance, but the future, how those get used in the future is still to be determined by whatever project is decided by the city council is going to move forward in terms of those scenarios or some other, type of consideration. And then under the California Environmental Quality Act, if any building is going to be removed, that gets careful evaluation and would have to be done in compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Michael, when I think about the historical preservation issues, I understand that the Friends of the Elementary School have made an application for that. It seems to me, I actually did a schoolhouse in Ventura, a mound school building, 30 years ago or so. And having it on the historical preservation list presents additional complications to your entitlement process on it. I'm wondering whether or not you're better off putting it on that list after you figure out what you're going to do with the property.
I've been a planner for a long time, worked for the city of San Luis Obispo for 27 years. We have a very strong architectural historical preservation program. Whether the building is on the list or not isn't really a factor as it relates to how the California Environmental Quality Act looks at it. It's important that the building be on the California Register in this day and time because of the way housing law is going, and how if you're going to demolish a historic resource, the listing can impact whether or not you have to do any kind of environmental analysis at all. My understanding of this project is one that it would be a rehabilitation of an existing building of which there's a clear record that it's a historic resource. And so the approach to that is going to be the same whether it's on the register or not on the register.
Okay. Follow-up question or a different question. Is an appraisal of the property part of your due diligence process?
There was an appraisal that was done by the school district as part of the purchase and sale agreement. I don't know if there's a plan to update that or to do anything more.
Is a
It's
copy?
not part of my.
Is that a public record that you can share with us?
The quiet guy in the back, the attorney, said we've done our own appraisal that in the past several years. So we have a copy of those. And in fact, all of these reports we will put online for review by the community and citizens. We just need to get that set up functionally on a website. And so, but yeah, the appraisal is out there. Do you recall any? details about it? Yeah. It was supportive of, it was higher than this, and so, Bill? 6.2 billion, Mr., oh, no, not billion, million. I confused million and bill. 6.2 bills. I know. Yeah.
One of the key things having to do with the appraisal are the underlying assumptions and so forth on it. I would just like to have a look at that, if we can do that. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? No, don't.
I can talk loudly without this. Just for a visual for people, when the slide was up there that gave the 3 scenarios, not that we are in favor of that or I'm advocating for that, but with the different types of housing here and the acreage of open space / parkland, illustrated on there, would it be fair to say it might be the fields, but not that entire green space for 3 acres? It seems like that's more than 3 acres. Can you guys speak to that for a visual for all of us?
Does anyone recall? I think it's about 5 acres in the field area. We've done some analysis and discussion when we first started this, and so 9.7 overall, including this little bulb out here. But that would be somewhere between 4 and 5 acres. And again, we'll get more specifics as we go into the council discussing the site selection. I think it's going to be a robust decision on what we want to do, what the city wants to do on that site. So, Courtney?
Hi, Mr. Craig or Ms. Conrad, if we could just have a really quick overview of the current financial situation for those that may be participating in this but haven't been to the budget meetings, just to understand the city's current financial condition and what funds are available and what the financing would look like and how that would impact the operating budget if you do have to take a loan for this.
You're going to point to me, aren't you? We just went through the budgeting process. Now go ahead and tell us about our fund balances. No, you don't want to do. Our fund balance policy, reserve policy, and then where we are currently. It's a good place.
That's a big question, Courtney. You're really putting me on the spot here. So currently in our general fund emergency reserve, we have approximately $7.8 million. That equates to approximately 52% of our operating budget in the general fund and Measure QE fund. So there's a little bit to play with there. If we wanted to bring it down to our minimum reserve requirement of 33%, I think that's approximately $4 million of the total unassigned fund balance. I'm getting wonky here. So 7.8 million in our general fund emergency reserve, but if we take into account all of our available fund balance in general fund, Measure QE, general fund emergency reserve, we have 14 million or so. I might be incorrect on that, but it leaves us with about 4 million that we could play with if we want to bring it down to the basement of 33% in reserve.
So,
however, we have no cushion right now in our operating budget at all. So that means we don't have any money for capital improvements that we may need. We're trying to find that money elsewhere. So we would, if we used that additional or available funding on this property, we wouldn't be able to use it for any other necessary capital improvements.
and we'll talk much more about it when we get to the August meeting, obviously, but I think in general, when we just went through the budget discussion and we talked about the reserve fund balance and the policy on what is the city's policy, I think my thought, or I don't know if I said it or not, but my comment is we're in a good position. We're not in trouble in that we are trying to meet ends meet on a daily basis. We have a robust reserve. That doesn't mean that we would recommend as staff drawing that down in any way, but as Emily said, it's 3 to 4 million or so above our current fund balance simply in general fund and Q&E. But there are also other components of that when you talk about how we're going to be budgeting going forward with capital projects, et cetera. But I think a big part of that financial picture we'll talk about in August.
John, we have a question back here.
Thank you. I was wondering when someone said something about when they changed that area to housing, the zoning. Because the school has been there. Why should that be a problem? I don't understand that at all.
It's confusing.
Well,
So-
it seems stupid
As
to
a,
me.
as a component of planning for a city and developing projects throughout a city, we create zones where we want to have things established, housing, commercial, industrial. This site, even though in the 80s and 90s it was being used as a public facility, a school, it was zoned and planned for high-density residential, the highest level of number of homes per acre. That doesn't mean it can't be used for something else. It just simply means that if you choose to use it for something else, you have to go through the process of changing the zoning. And that process is going to the Planning Commission, but then going to the City Council for approval of that. Is that?
Okay.
Nope.
But is that such a big deal that it would stop anything?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, good. I went K through 8 at that school, and I don't want to see it torn down.
Over here?
I just took a tour of it today, so I was one of the fortunate ones, and I noticed that some of the thoughts on this presentation were talking about remodeling, and I saw a structure in really great shape. I mean, even the bathrooms. Their bathrooms are no worse than this bathroom here. So, I mean, maybe I didn't go in the stall to see the toilets might be lower, but that's minor. So, I mean, like even the one of the rooms had humongous blackboards. I think you could incorporate that into the decor of the place rather than totally gutting it and turning it into something fancy and whatever.
I think that there's no one's talking about gutting it and turning it into anything different, but there is a cost associated with using it again. First, cleaning up the pigeons in there, so yeah. Should be green.
We're good? Oh, yeah, we're good. Okay, so my question is if we've looked at how much space is needed, I don't know off the top of my head, for a adequate soccer field. And the reason I ask that is because I volunteer and coach on those fields. And I can just tell you last week we had the fields at Morro Elementary filled. The Lila Kaiser fields full, and it was so bad that the softball team was using wiffle balls so they wouldn't hit the little football players. And so then we moved over to the Morro Bay High School fields, and those were full. And so have we thought about, because I've talked to Parks and Rec, what do we do if we lose those fields or we don't have adequate space for a soccer field? Have we thought about what happens to all the programs? I know it costs several $1 million to put a soccer field somewhere else, and that's not going to happen, so.
I think it's a good question. It's one of the considerations, obviously, when you start talking about the number of acres that you want on the site. Michael did go and measure the map. The green area here is about 4 acres of the 9.7 acres. And so any use there, council is obviously the ones who makes the decision on fields and what we want. And I think if the fields are designed to be used for something else, again, I assume the council will want a design company to come in and partner with the city and come up with community input and listening to what we want there. If it turns out that the fields aren't being able to be used on the final site selection, then perhaps the council will say, go find some other places and create fields out of. I'm not sure it's going to be a couple million, but there is a cost in that would lend itself to it. But it's definitely one of the considerations that we've heard and that we're considering obviously, when we present things. When you hold the mic, try not to hit this button. Ray has told us that
ready?
that's sometimes
Okay. First of all, I love the idea of repurposing the school for a new city hall. I think that's great. And I'm happy to hear that our consultants are looking at public-private partnerships for the cost sharing. And I'm just wondering, have you also approached Cal Poly? Like, for example, their marine science program, and they also have an incubator program, for basically startups through the school. And then also another opportunity could be potential offsite offices for some Silicon Valley folks, where they may have an office or two for a group of their engineers. And I'm just building on what somebody else had mentioned on the other side. I guess she had taken a tour of the facility. I'm wondering, will there be more opportunities for tours for the public to view the facility?
There certainly was. A community member came and asked for a tour, and we thought it was a great idea. Didn't have a chance to set it up before this meeting, but the plan is to set up tours for anybody that wants to go and see the site. One of the potential issues with that is we don't currently own the site, and so we have to get permission from the school district when we go on the site. There are insurance complications and issues, but they've been very open in allowing us to go on when we needed to with the consultants that were coming in and doing their work. I asked late last week if we could take a tour out there. We're given permission. Their attorney said they want to make sure we have insurance coverages in case somebody falls and gets hurt, that sort of thing. But our plan is to, during July and August, hold regularly scheduled tours over there. That it's not less a tour, it's more of just being able to walk through as a group and look at the site and selection. So that's in process and in place. So.
But I highly suggest that the city do look at potential rental opportunities through public-private partnerships. There's a lot of money at Cal Poly and also in Silicon Valley.
Great.
Okay.
Yep,
thank
definitely.
you.
Thanks for that input.
Oh, go ahead.
Did you want to?
No, go ahead.
Ask a question first? Okay. I love the idea of City Hall moving into the school. But this is a question about the financing part you had up there about Vistra paying $3 million. So I'm curious if there are friendly discussions with Vistra now about them, that they've acknowledged that they will be doing that, or are they, kind of playing games and saying they're going to take down the stacks and stuff like that? Because that's $3 million. That's a lot.
One-time 300?
Yeah.
Or is it annually? Yeah.
So the agreement with Vistra is structured such that they are required to take down the facility, including the stacks, by the end of 2027. If they do not do that in that time frame, then they are required to remit to the city the $3 million. It's a one-time payment. Estimates that I've heard for taking that down are $10 million to $30 million to make that site flat and clean. And so there's a lot of discussion on that site. We work with Vistra at a staff level most weeks. We need to go on the site for certain things. We have to get their permission. We're currently negotiating for our water and sewer department to put some injection wells on that site. So we have a communication with them on a working level, staff basis. There haven't really been a lot of higher level discussions with the company. It is an asset of that company. They own it. They have it on their books as an asset, along with 2 other properties in the state of California. And so that is a continual talking point and a smokestack in the room, if you will, about the future of Morro Bay. And so I think it's very, I've heard nothing but concern about that and what we want to do for the future from the current council. And I think it's something that we are working diligently on a longer-term solution. It's difficult because they are such a large corporation, not even headquartered in the state, but we continue to work with them on a staff level. And so we're hoping to build those bridges that have further discussions there. Setting.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Cauldron. Thank you for a great report.
You mentioned that you are prepping the site for public use, and I'm a little confused about that because since 1936, that site has been used for only public use. And I've been a part of it since 1979 and can attest to you that we've handled big crowds on that site, and everything's worked out wonderfully.
Yeah, that's a good, really good point. And in fact, some of the opinions that we're getting through this due diligence process suggest that moving government offices into the building would not be what they call under the building code a change in occupancy. And it's a change in occupancy that triggers current standards for a variety of things in terms of access, fire suppression, et cetera, et cetera. And so not triggering a change in occupancy because it's already a public use, as you say, is a good thing if the goal is to reuse the building as quickly as possible at a lower expense. But that's still work to be done. One of the things that'll be done is the Community Development Department has on call a consultant that checks building plans and does code analysis. So one of the things that we may ask them to do is to give us their opinion if a building permit were submitted to reoccupy the building as a government office, what standards through the building permit plan check process would be applied. We want to know what our own plans examiner would say in that scenario. But we're also getting advice from Spectra Company and from TY Lin in terms of what has to be done. For example, it's a preliminary report, but one of the suggestions in terms of structural is that in order to have government offices in the former classrooms, you would have to strengthen the flooring. So it's a raised foundation. It's like a pier and post system, and the amount of structural support underneath the floors of the classrooms may not be sufficient to support a government office occupancy. And so they're very optimistic about that. It's not a massive undertaking, but it is the kind of thing that you'll probably see when we publish that report that's coming from the structural engineer.
Public schools are government entities. We work for the government. So we remodeled the San Luis Junior High School to be the district offices. And I was actually part of remodeling the old classroom that we used. And we used an office solutions company that comes in and puts partitions. They don't weigh a lot. And there's usually only 4 or 5 secretaries, a director. So we did not have to do a lot of structural. We did not have to reinforce raised floors. Mm-hmm. So I just hope you're keeping that in mind, that we don't have to do a lot.
Yeah, and what I'm doing in my role as sort of managing this process is taking the reports from the professionals, organizing them, and then presenting them to the city manager and to the city council for decision making. So I'm not drawing any conclusions or responsible for dictating anything that's going to happen in the future. These are reports that we're receiving from professionals who also have experience doing these types of projects.
Saw Hillary's hand go up first here.
Thank you, Mr. Craig, and thank you to city staff for holding this meeting and for taking on this work. I know it's a lot of work for all of you on the behalf of our community that is for this project, so I really appreciate that. My comment is just about the open space. I just want to reiterate what was already said. If we're interested in attracting families to continue to see Morro Bay as a viable place to raise a family, that's one perspective, looking at the use of those soccer fields. losing sort of a soccer use of that space would be, in my opinion, a short-sighted, a decision that might solve some short-term problems and make a long-term thing that we can't get back. And so then when I look at the housing scenarios and I see the different numbers, I just did some napkin math, and scenario C sounds still, I know you pointed out that scenario A is a fiscally strong position, but I think scenario C is also fiscally strong. And then I'm just curious if those unit scenarios include the idea of selling off the existing properties, which would, for members of our community that are concerned we're not offering and generating enough housing opportunities, wouldn't those existing plots also be included? So I'm assuming they're not included in those estimates. These are just estimates for Morro Elementary, but we would also gain additional units through those vacant lots. That was just my observation. The current city properties, yeah. And thank you so much, everyone, for all your work on this. Thank you.
That's this does not include the City Hall site. The City Hall site is right over there, and we have a picture of it and sort of what that might mean in terms of being able to sell that off for additional housing. It's a little less than an acre of the current City Hall site. But yes, that's a good point, that obviously fields are gold in terms of families wanting a place for their children to play, and so it's a cost-benefit analysis across the board. So.
Hi there. I want to say thank you so much to City Manager John Craig. I know this has been a lot of work, and you're kind of just dropped here and like, here you go, here's this big project. So thank you to the staff. This is obviously really important to this community. Thank you, Erilyn. I want to reiterate what Hillary said over there. I personally would love to see the bulk of the housing on where the current city offices are, once those city offices are moved into our historic schoolhouse, preserving the fields for children, for adults, and it's not just soccer. People use that for all sorts of sporting activities, and that is essential for healthy human beings to be able to have that type of activity. Next, I would just like to read a quick letter from Bill Roshan, who could not be here today. I think a lot of you know him, but for those who don't, Bill is a member of our community. He is a highly credentialed architect with numerous accolades, with a specialty in historic preservation. And just doing a quick search for him, I found that one of a very strong credential is that he served as the president of the Los Angeles Planning Commission for many years. So this is a person who has a lot of, he knows what he's talking about. So this is the letter from Bill Roshan. Encouragements and considerations for the 10-acre Morro Elementary. Morro Elementary is significant to our local community. In fact, it is vital. As the geographic civic center of our town, it should be considered a thriving heart of community culture, business, and activity. Morro Elementary must be our civic vision, well-crafted and well-considered to the needs and aspirations of our Commonwealth. Morro Elementary's civic vision will require a collective process, bringing everyone together transparently with intention and inspiration, supported by responsible and factual decision-making. Now, please consider, number one, city commitment to an inclusive process with the maximum transparency possible for good business practices. 2, city completion of a one-year public effort vision phase 1 before options are voted on to sell, divide, or fully commit to land use decisions and contract obligations to third parties. 3, assembly of a community-based steering committee composed of necessary expertise to consider a full menu of uses and development options. Facilitation could be funded by Friends of Morro Elementary. Number 4, Public-private cooperation for strategic planning that involves multiple professionals representing community assets, city service needs, city income development, financial feasibility, including costs of investment, infrastructure investments such as fire lanes, stormwater, curb and fire, and sidewalks, professional fees potentially funded by Friends of Morro Elementary. And number 5, research and examples from other cities and best practices that support and suggest a spectrum of opportunities to be considered and evaluated. So I just see this, that's it for Bill speaking. Now I'm back to Nicole. I just see this as tremendous opportunity, and I think everybody can have much of what they are looking for in this scenario. Thank you.
Cool. Nice stop.
Betty.
Betty, well, Natalia.
Thank you.
Right here, so go for it.
Thank you, Errol, and thank you, everybody. I want to support what other people have said, especially the idea that we can take our time and work this out in phases after we acquire the property, which I feel like everybody here is on board with acquiring it. And if the city hall moved in immediately without doing another thing, it would be a huge step up from where they are now in every way. It just looks better. I'm sure I can see it all there now. It would just be a much better place for them. And so I'm not especially in favor of burning our bridges behind us as far as decision-making about the extraneous things that we may see that we have need for more open space. I definitely don't want to see the fields cluttered up anytime soon. And the whole thing would be much better if we are circumspect in decision-making and let people have input about it. And I especially want to try and keep the Montessori school there, because Morro Bay needs, first of all, it's a Montessori school, but it's a public school chartered by Santa Barbara School District. And anybody can go there basically for free. It's a gem and a huge asset to our community. And I know how important schools are to families, because tragically, 2 families in my line of descendants moved out of state because of the current state of affairs in California schools primarily. So that's all.
Thanks, Natalia. And Ben.
Thank you for that comment. I will say that I don't think there's anybody here that is against open space. Everybody loves fields. I mean, we can all agree that fields are wonderful. I don't think there's anybody here that is against housing and cheaper housing alternatives for workforce housing or younger families. Again, I don't think anybody would be against that. I think for us and decision makers of the council, the decision is how to pay for the purchase and the rehabilitation of the site while trying to please everyone in terms of open space and housing and government use, et cetera. We are not a rich community. We are not a wealthy community with money that we can just choose to put that away. And so on one regard, I don't envy the council for having to decide what they want to do on the site, but I think they're very open to listening to these comments that are made tonight. But I will say, as a staff person and a city manager and looking at the site, there's a lot of space there, and the way that it would end up being used is totally up to the community and the decision makers, but at the same time, there is a price to that, and that I think is the realistic comment that I would make is that I'm very conscious every day of the money that we spend as a government and how we go about doing it, and to ensure that we are financially viable for the long term of the community. So just wanted to put that in there in terms of the space use.
Good, because I'm going to talk about space use. This is a little thing I got off the internet. I think it's pretty proportional. The top part is the school property, the lower part is the city property. It's not just this yellow part. It's because the city owns half a block between Shasta and going inward, but we also own that street right of way if you close Shasta Street, and we also own, as you know, where the library is, and we own around it up to where Piney Way is and the community and the Chamber of Commerce. So there's about 2 acres there. So rather than put housing here, why not put it here and maybe up in that corner up here, wherever that guy is up there. And that preserves your open space for your fields. That lets you have your kids. That gives you really nice offices for your employees. And it gives you some nice senior housing or other kind of housing down here that's so close to the post office, so close to the library, so close to Albertsons, real close to downtown businesses.
You just sold the library.
No, I didn't do nothing to no library.
Yeah, you sold it. You said this is part of this right here. We own this.
We do. We own all of that, and
But
we
if
own all up here.
If we put housing there, then there's no library to go to.
No.
I'm
You
just
don't.
kidding.
Doesn't mean you get rid of your library. Or you could put your library over on there. But I think the point is that you got lots of options, and I think we need to look at more than just that half a block. That we need to look at all the property that the city owns, and private partnership, private-public partnership. Keeping the kids happy. Someone said before that our community's dying, and it's not. It's that we have so many options of private schools that we do have kids and families in this town. They go to the Montessori school, they go to the school over in Los Osos, they go to the public school. You don't just look at the public school to see whether we have kids or not. You look at all the private schools around as well. And what else do I need to say?
Then it's all decided. Vote on Betty's proposal. Everyone for? Everyone against? Okay, great. We're done.
I have been to several of these meetings, and I would like to say I am so impressed with the staff of this city. I am so impressed with the amount of work you've done and the skill with which you've done it. You earn your paycheck. I'm impressed.
Did everybody catch that? Everybody over here, did you hear that?
You could write that up in the newspaper, sir. The other thing I would say is that look at that field. Just look at the field. Think of it with kids running all over it. 3 or 4, but in my day, 3 or 4 baseball fields with kids all over the place. And I would like you to look at one thing when you're planning. There is no bathroom.
Thank you.
I wondered if Michael Mr. Caudron, if you could talk a little bit more about the Hunter Smith test fit plan. Being on the subcommittee, you showed us a kind of a mock-up dry run of that, and it was really I'm super visual, and so it was helpful for me, even though that wasn't necessarily the final solution. It was really helpful for me to know how much of the city's capacity could fit into that building. Could you talk about that a little bit?
I don't have the diagram. We received a draft from Hunter Smith Architecture, one of the consultants, that's looking at the historic schoolhouse building and preparing what they call a test fit. So we did a survey of all the existing staff departments. So it's public works, it's community development, it's administration, it's admin services, which includes finance and utility billing and all of that. Administrative staff that's currently in City Hall. We looked at recreation as well. And so we surveyed them, so created a survey and had everybody answer questions about what their space needs were. And then Hunter Smith actually came on site and measured everybody's workspaces and measured the existing workstations and what the storage needs are for, I mean, you know, so it's not just, you know, people, it's all of the storage needs that the city has as well. And then they actually took the floor plan of the historic building, and you'll have access to this. We're talking about creating a website and making sure that you have access to all these reports, certainly before the final is produced in August for City Council consideration. But they created a test fit floor plan, and it's neat. It shows essentially how all of the city departments could fit within the different classroom spaces within the existing building. And if you've been to the Santa Maria City Hall, you probably have a sense then of how that would work. So that you might have, you know, one of the concepts you might have, certainly the main auditorium being council chambers and a community room and all of that kind of thing. But as well, like going down the main hallways, if you have community development, for example, going down the main axis, if it's offices are on the right-hand side, they could create a counter, just open up a space in the wall. We're not talking about like taking walls down and, you know, redesigning the space, but open up a counter space so that people just going down the hallway have access to a public works counter, to the business license counter, admin services counter, and it's all right there in one space. And so they've done that. It's not a plan, it's a test fit. It's just a test. Ultimately, the plan will be up to, you know, the city to direct somebody else to do that work in the future. Is that good? Yeah.
Christy has a question.
Just to reiterate again, what a terrific presentation this was and all the work that went into it. Thank you to the staff and to the City Council Subcommittee. And I just wanted to address one thing that I know there's been a little discussion about today, but I know some people have fear about the historic nomination of the property. It actually is the National Register nomination, and then it's automatically part of the California Register once it's registered. The reason for that is that when a property is on the National Register, has to be registered, not just eligible as it is now. And Michael Codron pointed out that even being eligible means they'd have to deal with the property in terms of CEQA. In California, not in other states, but in California, that would be, you know, already as much of a, let's say, encumbrance as if it's registered. The register is a honorary thing, in terms of federal requirements. It doesn't have any requirements for federal, but what it does carry with it is the property would then, the building that is, the buildings that are contributors, which are the 4 buildings which were discussed, the other buildings are non-contributors that could be removed. Then it is eligible to use the State Historic Building Code for any renovation. This is a huge deal, a huge cost saving. Anybody else any other building that was going through an adaptive reuse would have to comply with Title 24, which is the energy codes that have been in place for a long time. Somebody retrofitting this building would have to redo the windows to comply with modern energy codes. Historic buildings, you want to preserve the windows. They've already been replaced with double glazed windows, so they actually are pretty energy efficient now. But the historic opening and the frames were all maintained, which is terrific. So that is a very large cost savings. Other things also apply. In terms of structural, in terms of disabled access, there are provisions that allow the building to be maintained as it is. So that means, again, a huge cost savings in terms of if you put a use in that's as compatible as city offices are, I think we're looking at a really good scenario. So I would put people's fears on that to rest. This is an honorary thing for the city that we should be proud of. And it's not something that is going to be an encumbrance on us. So I feel that is important to understand. I think also in terms of properties that could be leveraged to help pay for this. We've done a study that shows that if you come across here to access community center, so it's not just a little orphan over there, that this could possibly be housing, some other use, but this remaining portion, which you guys are talking about, the 3 acres, it's about 3 acres here, is larger than a World Cup soccer dimensions, could be used 3 to 6 smaller soccer fields. So there's a way to use this field and really also provide a park-like setting for any housing that is put in here. What I wanted to ask the city staff to consider is analyze this. It could be housing here with parking underneath. Analyze this building, because whoever's been to the elementary school knows there's a beautiful auditorium there that will become the council chambers. So in the end, this building could either be sold or have an additional use. So I think it would be helpful for the end of the due diligence to really do an analysis of the property that Betty mentioned. Even if you keep the library, our analysis was that could accommodate easily 90 units there. So I think to have all those things considered for the cost implications would be really helpful.
Thank you, Christy. It's great concept ideas. I do want to mention, it's been mentioned a couple times, the subcommittee. I was very delinquent in not talking about Councilors Lufay and Landrum that are the Morro Bay Elementary Subcommittee of the council. They've been tasked with helping us marshal us through this process, and they've been very involved and informed on what we're trying to do as well. So I neglected to thank them for their work on that as well. So.
Thank you.
You've already asked your question. It's done for the night.
I haven't asked.
You haven't? Sorry.
I think I was breathing.
I was just joking.
So, when we're looking at the financial aspect of it, with the historic designation, if we should request grants, we would get a better rate on those as well. Well, if we should look at any type of additional financing for it. But between the $3 million from Vistra, the possible $2 million from the teen center, that in itself would pay for the property. And of the $4 million that we have in our reserves, even a half, well, the million that we were discussing, paying for the portion of the property, even half of those funds would be adequate for the rehabilitation of the facility. So, it's a win-win either way. But we have to seriously, push the teen center sale big time. And then the $4 million or the $3 million from Vistra, and whatever else they may want to sweeten the pot with. Why not? If you don't ask, you don't get.
What are we asking? For $6 million?
At least $6 million, but I'll take 4.5 from them, for the hassle they've put us through in this city.
They're a profitable corporation for a reason. I don't think that, but yes, that's a good points. Thank you, Michelle.
I think that if we can get to the purchase and do that, the income from the property, if we own it, we can do all kinds of things with it. I happen to be in a theater company. There's a theater over there. And we have people who ask us about using the facility. There are needs for that. There are conferences that need more than a 50-room at a hotel. There are all kinds of things that we could use to rent that property for, festivals, whatever, and have it making money as we're improving it. It doesn't have to be all. I'm sorry. Anyway, there's ways that we can make money on that property and get working on it. It doesn't like me. There we go. It doesn't have to be paid for in advance. I think it will pay for itself a lot once we get occupied and are able to use it for all the things that people ask.
There you go, Janice.
We needed a meeting room for our annual group for our our board of directors, and even that was hard to find. We finally found one in a hotel, but we need spaces like that for the public to bring them here all year round and not just in the summertime.
Thank you. In the back, Erin, in the back.
You know, I think this is the Joni Mitchell song situation where you don't know what you've lost till it's gone. And so if we don't save this open space, our children in the future won't know that we had this wonderful open space in our city. And I was listening to a book the other day, and they were talking about our children in the future. And for instance, if this administration cuts down all the redwoods, our children in the future won't know that there were redwoods here, and that they'll just think it's normal not to have redwoods, or not to have trees, or not to have, you know, the open spaces and things that are the people who our parents, our grandparents, parents before saved so much open space in California for us. We really need to look around and say we're dang lucky to live here and that people cared. You know, like, it's something to think about. We could lose a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still a question back here or a comment?
The finance director, Emily, was it? You used an interesting term. You didn't say there was $7.8 million in the general budget. You said there was $7.8 million in the emergency reserve. What capital improvements are you planning on putting off?
I think our microphone goes out of range in the back there. So what capital improvements are we putting off if we use that money for this site?
Well, then why are we tapping into the emergency reserve at all?
Why aren't we?
Why aren't we?
We're not. Are you saying, why are we tapping into it now?
When the question was asked about how our budget was looking,
Right.
it was 7.8 in the emergency reserve. Correct. Well, that seems to imply that that money is going to be in play for this?
It's up to the decision makers and the county council. Everything's up into play. I think, right. And it's very, very much a component of it. It's a complicated discussion. There are a lot of complications here. We've done our best to try and explain the topics as far as done. We meet weekly, and we do work most every day during the weeks, but we don't meet to learn all of this information. We're trying to get it across and share. So there's a lot of background that we're not able to talk about. Not that we're hiding anything, it's just that there's a lot of understanding that comes into learning through this process. I'll sound like a policy wonk. I'm a city manager for a reason, and it's because I enjoy the concept of a community coming together, taking their money, paying fees, taking taxes, and spending it for themselves to make their lives better. That's what we do here every day. And so how we go about doing that is up for debate and discussion. The way it works is the city elects councilors and policymakers, and they make the decisions, and we go and implement it. So there's a lot of money that is out there. I talk about reserves a lot when I make budget presentations or talk about how much we want to keep in the bank, and I always relate it to if something goes wrong, if recession comes on or if COVID comes back, our TOT drops, we have no revenues, we begin laying off staff, hopefully we wouldn't have to lay off the public safety citizens. There's a lot, it's a big matrix, as you understand and know. And so the dynamic of whether we use our fund balance or use our reserves for this specific purpose as opposed to some other purpose, I think is a big component of that. I will do my best to present that information to the community and the council. as we go forward, and then we'll see what happens. There's no real rush. I don't feel like in deciding what we want to spend on the site or do it, but I'd like to get it done and get it moving and keep going. And that's why we talked to the school district, we came to agreement, and we moved that forward. So I think I've heard from individual counselors and the council as a whole that they are very interested in a robust discussion about all the topics we've talked about tonight, that they're not going to make decisions without listening to community members and making decisions based on what they've heard and what they feel is the best result for the city. We all agree it's a great concept, it's a great idea and a great thought. How we go about doing that is where the discussions begin and the disagreements may pop up, but that's what it's like living our lives and making moments.
Saying that we all agree is sort of over talking my point, maybe. If we want a new city hall, open-ended, emotional type project with public funds. You're talking, what, 4 historic buildings?
Yes.
And they should be preserved, but why is this city getting involved in this? Have you ever remodeled a historic building? This is gonna be nuts.
And that's why we're going through this due diligence. That's why we want to learn what it means to rebuild a structure or a facility. And there's a lot more into it that we're able to share tonight. This item, as I understand it, originated in 2020 when the school district proposed selling the entire site to a developer and putting 150, I believe it was 150 trailers on the site. And that was a proposal that they put forth and advertised, and that began the discussion of how we got here. And so this is where we are. I appreciate your comments and your thoughts that perhaps this is not something you would be interested in doing as a citizen, because we all have a right to our opinion and our statements. And so our point as a staff is to prepare the information, become as close as possible to the goal that the city has set out in front of us, and that's where we are and what we're doing. So
the environmental reports?
Are the environmental reports by you?
Yeah.
Yeah, the asbestos reports, they're final? I don't know if they're final. Yeah, they're out there.
They're not out there net.
Not yet. We're going to make all these documents available and out there, and put it on websites, easy access. But if you want to come by the office, we'll facilitate that. Look at any. There's nothing to hide. It's plenty of information.
There's nothing to hide, but it seems like you might be downplaying the hazard and cost of the abatement.
I don't think we are, but you're welcome to talk about it with us and convince us otherwise. Yeah.
That was all my comments. Thanks
Yeah.
for,
Sure. Thanks.
So this, I hesitate to even talk about this, but back when the school district first closed the school, the Quintana family raised an issue, I guess in the original bill of sale, the original sale agreement, back in the 30s, the terms were that it was specifically for a school site. And if it ever stopped being a school site, they believed that they're supposed to get it back. Now, I just got an email last week from one of their family restating this whole thing. And I suggested he contact you because I was pretty sure that a title search would be a basic thing that you guys would do before you spent $5 million on a piece of property. So I would like to request that in your final report, you address this once and for all, because the only thing I remember back from 2001, I actually read the agreement, somebody had it, was that the school district paid with a $20 1929 gold piece, which if you had that gold piece today, it'd be worth $6 million. But it was probably spent at Happy Jack's, who knows. Anyway, I would like to see you guys put that to rest, because there are folks in that family that still believe that that's the situation. And if you want, I'll forward you that email. Maybe you can contact, he may have contacted you.
I haven't heard that from anyone. I have heard that story a couple times, but it wasn't concrete enough to find anything out about it. We do. Let's have it. We're happy to look at it. So we do have all the school district files that they've been given to us and shared, and so, but we rely on the title company, obviously, to make sure that's clean and it's good. We'll review documents to the extent that we have them and bring forth.
They did bring that up back when they closed.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to look back and see. Two more questions. Yes, comment.
Yeah, just a reflection back. It sounded like one of the things you wanted was to take feedback back to your council, in part in how this whole project may be funded. In one input that I would have is that the project should essentially be self-funded between the housing or reselling of city properties. It should be self-funded. It concerns me that you're looking at potentially taking other revenue and putting it towards this project. I heard the sale of the old teen pregnancy center. I've been to a number of public meetings here at the city recently, and I've also heard specifically mentioned at this meeting, resources are limited. We have no cushion in our operating budget. We are not rich. We are not wealthy. And so
I appreciate you writing all that down and bringing it up to me again.
There's a lot of other issues that are important to community members. It was really heartbreaking to hear folks on Little Morro Creek talk about some of the trials and tribulations that they're having. And so, I think it's important that it's self-funded between all the buildings so that additional revenue can go to other priorities for the city. And there's a lot of competing, really, really important projects to people who live here. And I think that's really important to take into consideration. Taking out loans concerns me because in the long run, that's just going to cost more. I think that has been mentioned. So yeah, that's just my perspective, just making sure that we're balanced in the needs for everybody.
I appreciate your perspective, but I also appreciate you speaking up because that's what a community is about. It's in a room full like this where everyone's for it. It's important that you feel comfortable speaking up and saying that there's some other considerations that you have, and so I really appreciate that, and it certainly will be taken in consideration. So, two more questions. Erin, right here in the middle. Judy, do you have something?
Teresa, yeah. Hi, thanks. Great information tonight. Thanks to the staff. A couple quick questions. One is, I'm not sure if the project would be eligible for national historic tax credits. I was just curious. I think the state program is paused. Second question is if the lifespan of the existing city hall buildings is close and if significant investment would be needed soon.
That's a great question. The mayor mentioned to me individually early on, like if we were going to build a new city hall, millions of dollars in order to build a new city hall for public sector purposes. And so we're not planning on building a new city hall, but I will say that the space is very limited. We have an office that is 8 by 8 with 2 individuals in. They have to go out into the hallway often to talk to other members of the staff because we're so tight squeezed in there. I'm not complaining or making an excuse. I'm just saying it's a pretty tight quarters right now for all of the aspects of what we're trying to do. The site plan says that we would fit in there. It's a nice use. It makes sense, I think, from a general perspective. Paying for it is another option, as we've been saying all night. But the lifespan of the current offices, we are making it work as due. But anyone that's been there knows you have to choose which building to go to, and you're always in the wrong one, it seems. You got to go to the other one to pay your water bill. And so, yeah, that's a real consideration that I think that is important for the city 15, 20, 40 years from now about how we'll be. So one more right here in the middle. Thank you for your patience.
I just would like to request that what Coach DRC shared earlier, that was news to me, that it was so difficult to find a playing field for our kids. And I would love it if Morro Bay took a clear stand that we're preserving needed space. It's not just an idea, but
it sounds like it's needed. So I would love to have that stated in tonight's records, that, you know, like the Joni Mitchell song, once it's gone, it's gone. So it's important.
Thanks. I'll say that I had heard early on in this that this is a field now. It's currently, we can really use the field for sports, as many commenters have said tonight. But does the field necessarily need to be at this site, or can it be in another site? It may be at a lower cost area. I'm not proposing that. I'm not in favor of that. I'm just saying that that could be another consideration of fields in other parts of our city. And everybody says, where? And I say, I don't know. I just got here. So, but that's another thing that can happen, is trading a field for another field somewhere else. But
Of course, the fear is the theory that we can put it somewhere, and then once that's yeah,
right.
I'm very sketchy on those kind of discussions.
And you probably are right, have a right to do that, given our history of government everywhere.
Thank you, John. Judy Setting. Just to speak to the gentleman who brought up the Quintana family, the Friends of Morro Elementary have asked the city to maintain a school on that property. Right now, the Montessori school is there. It's very prolific, and we really want the city to keep that so that we can honor the Quintana gift. And then as far as the sports field, they're historic. They've been here since I've been here. They're historic. So they fit in with keeping them. I wanted to speak to something that could help with financing. The value of a community partnership. For our area, the value of a community partnership is best realized with the birthing and construction of the SLO Performing Arts Center. As early as the 1950s, the dream for a performing arts center began to take shape. In 1961, the Civic Fine Arts Association was formally established. After 2 decades of advocating, planning, fundraising, and trying to build momentum for a cultural center in SLO County, the group disbanded. The SLO community would not let the idea fade away. In 1985, the city of SLO commissioned a major study that recommended an unprecedented partnership. The city of SLO, Cal Poly, and the newly formed not-for-profit Foundation for the Performing Arts Center would work together to create a new building on the Cal Poly campus. Once this partnership was solidified, local donors stepped forward. Volunteers committed their time. Civic leaders embraced the vision. Artists, educators, business leaders, and community members chose to believe in something that did not yet exist. The successful result of this partnership is alive and well, as witnessed by all of us who have been thoroughly entertained at the SLO Performing Arts Center. What do we have that the SLO community did not? We have historic, exceptionally well-built, and in good condition buildings. This jump start means we have the ability to accomplish our vision for Morro Elementary in years, not decades. The community-formed nonprofit Friends of Morro Elementary is confident that the most successful way to bring the Morro Bay community together with the city is to form a partnership and work together to create a home for City Hall, performing arts venue, sports fields, and education facilities at our historic Morro Elementary. A community of dreamers and planners that work together can achieve amazing results. Historic preservation and the arts are worth the risk and effort. And let me just add that buying this property is not a risk, because we are getting a steal of a deal. If we have to sell it, we're going to make money. We're sorry about your time you may have wasted, but we're going to make money. So it's going to be wonderful, and I appreciate all that the staff has done and that our council has stood up for us, the community, when we said, hey, we want this. They made every effort to make it happen, and they deserve a great applause from us.
Thanks to everyone. We'll be hanging out up here if you have any individual questions. We'll see you. The next council meeting is July 28th. And then the next community meeting will be in August, on August 25th. Thanks, everybody.